Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome to the Joan Hamburg Show. And we do this show every Sunday starting at 2 o'clock. So I'm inviting you along. And we have a very special guest today who just has done a musical for Netflix, and I'm going to introduce you to her, Debra Messing. And Debra has just come off Broadway. You know Debra Messing. She's one of the most prolific actresses we have, and an interesting, amazing person. So stay right here, because Debra Messing is one of today's guests on the Sunday edition of the Joan Hamburg Show.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Joan Eats.
It's hard to believe that summer is coming to an end. And if you have a craving for Maine-style lobster rolls and you're not going to Maine, you can actually get them by mail. Maine-style lobster roll kits. McCloon's, MCLOONS Lobster Shack, is sold on goldbelly.com, and this is one of Maine's best lobster shops. They have great lobster rolls. The shack is still there, but we love Goldbelly's. That's the mail order where you can get any food you've ever dreamt of. And McCloon's Maine Lobster Roll Kit, 4-pack, for $99.95. That's a sale price. But you get a pound of lobster tail, knuckle, and claw, 4 New England rolls, Casco Bay artisan sea salt butter, mayo, roll sleeves, instruction. They're caught on the day they're sent, they're steamed, and they are delicious. The Lobster Guy was voted the #1 lobster shipper for 2022 by Consumer Reviews. Go on to thelobsterguy.com, and they're also delicious. And Luke's Lobster Roll Kits, lukeslobster.com, family-owned Maine business, third-generation lobster man, Luke Holden. They have multiple locations in Manhattan, and they're really delicious. The kit costs $125 with free shipping. The website, lukelobster.com. And honestly, you wouldn't believe how good they are. So, lobster rolls get you through the end of this too fast summer, and enjoy every bite.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Jean Hanff Korelitz is a very prolific writer, has been writing books for years, and yet she came out with a book fairly recently called The Plot, and everyone was talking about that book. And now Jean has another book, a novel called The Latecomer, and I couldn't put this book down either. I'm not going to tell you everything because I hate to do that with fiction, but it's about a pair of triplets, the Oppenheimer triplets, Harrison, Lewin, and Sally, and these are 3 siblings that you would think are tied all together, but the truth is they hate each other.
They really can't stand one another.
Right? can't stand it.
Absolutely.
And they're born to very wealthy, successful Jewish Americans. They live in Brooklyn Heights in a gorgeous home. They go to the vineyard. There's a family business. And the three of them are as different as can be. But I'm curious, Jean, all your books, we love hearing where they came from, what was going on. Where did this come from in your head?
Well, I think like many writers and maybe many people, I'm obsessed with families. I mean, families are kind of, for a novelist, families are just the gift that keeps on giving. You can write, 50 novels about families, and none of them will be like any of the others. And in this case, I was thinking a lot about birth order and children born later into, technically the same family, but it's a different family if you let 5, 10, 15, 18 years in this case go by between the kids. And then when you add, infertility interventions, there's a whole other layer of randomness and kind of human interference. And in this case, there are 4 embryos sharing a petri dish. 3 go into the mom, and they're the ones that are not supposed to make it. It's the 4th one who's going to be sent off to somebody with a more competent, reproductive system.
Right.
But in fact, all 3 of these triplets, survive and become the Oppenheimer triplets. And only 18 years later did the parents make this kind of crazy decision to have that 4th child. And, my question was always, what has to be happening in a family for that to seem like a good idea? Something has got to be really, really wrong in a family to make that crazy decision.
Well, and there's a lot of conflict in this family, and surprising conflict, and things happen all the time. And these triplets not only don't want to deal with their mother and father, but they can't stand each other.
No, and they don't really view this late child, this latecomer, as any part of their own lives. They're about to leave for college. They want out. The fact that mom and dad are starting all over with an infant as soon as they are out the door is, disgusting as far as they're concerned. And the other big question is, what's it going to be like for that kid when they realize, all of the implications of that birth order and that huge gap. And in fact, that latecomer is having an entirely different life experience than their older siblings. So a lot of craziness in this family. I love writing about characters who are just not nice people, not terrifically good people. I never mind being told by readers that the characters are unlikable, at least at the outset. I think that's terrific. Not everybody, likes that, but I do.
No, and you got the fact that you could have 3 siblings and each one is going to have a different childhood. My brother always said to me, I can't believe we have the same parents.
Right.
Or we grew up in the same house. Like,
even
what
even
happened?
the difference between the first child and the second child is enormous, because when you're a first child, your parents are terrified. They don't know what they're doing. They've never had a child before. When the second child comes along, they know what to expect. And that's a different childhood experience. So, I mean, birth order is endlessly fascinating, I think.
Without question. And I have to tell you, which I thought you did so brilliantly, was the father of the family.
Mm-hmm.
From the very beginning, has a response to pictures, to paintings, to art that is really extraordinary, and will make you, if you don't really understand art or have any interest, the impact that art can have on people's lives, how they're literally, some people, overcome by what to you may look like a mess of color. and someone else something extraordinary.
Yeah, that is actually a real thing. It's called the Stendhal syndrome, and it was named in the 19th century for European tourists who literally fainted before great art. And when this father, Salo Oppenheimer, who's going to build his own private museum of incredibly important, mid-20th century paintings, first encounters a Cy Twombly in a museum in Europe, he literally faints before it, and that is just his first encounter with the art that is going to impact him so deeply. He's a very troubled guy, and he's been responsible through an accident, a terrible accident, for the deaths of two people. And this is not a spoiler. It's in the first paragraph of the novel. But art is the only thing that really helps him at all. And I have to admit that I am not particularly knowledgeable about art. But I have a friend who is, and I reached out to that friend, and we kind of together put together the fantasy art collection of this character.
No, and it's really good. It's also not only about art collecting, but it's about, and I understand that so well because for over 11 years we lived in rural Vermont, and the highlight was going to yard sales, tag sales, old houses, going through such garbage, and you would find a treasure. Yeah. And that's and you have them finding treasures. And that was never part of your DNA.
Well, no, I'm quite an obsessive, garage sailor and flea marketer and antiques person, but I have the flip side of collecting is hoarding, and I love all these TV shows about hoarding. I'm totally obsessed with them, and one of the triplets does sort of go down into that world, not as a hoarder, but as somebody who goes into these houses and kind of liberates them. And all of these things kind of weave together with the story of these four kids. There's a triplet who becomes a right-wing ideologue. There's one who almost converts to a different religion. They all are going in different directions, and it's really up to this latecomer, this child born 18 years later, whom they could not get away from fast enough, who really brings them together and kind of solves the riddle of their family. And that's why it's so satisfying, especially the last third of the book is really a kind of very joyful, coalescing of these storylines. You got to get there, but once you're there, I'm told that you can't stop reading at that point. I couldn't stop writing at that point.
Well, and I couldn't stop reading. Did you know an Oppenheimer family before you created them? No, not really.
I mean, in terms of the name, the name was chosen, nothing to do with the father of the atom bomb. The name was chosen in homage to a real person who lived in the 18th century who was a scapegoat and a martyr, a Jewish martyr in Stuttgart. He was known as Oppenheimer, and his kind of nom de plume was Yud Zeus. And 200 years later, Goebbels made a propaganda film about him called Yud Zeus, which was used to fire up anti-Semitism in Nazi Germany. So I wanted to remind people that this was a real person. In real life, he had no living descendants, but the nice thing about being a novelist is that you do control the world. You are in charge. And I was able to make this family, the Oppenheimers of Brooklyn, his descendants.
Right, and you also threw in real estate too. That
always.
But that real estate is good.
Not to write about great houses.
I know we love great houses, and we love all the discoveries that we have in this book. And the book is funny, too. So when the plot, a huge success, the book prior to this,
Yes.
What's happened to that book?
Well, it's about to be filmed. It's going to star Mahershala Ali, and that's very exciting. I am not involved in the making of it, but the producer keeps me posted on where we are, and I think they're going to start filming in January. So that's really exciting. And The Latecomer also is being developed for television for a limited series, and we're not as far along on that one, so I have nothing to report. But I think it's going to be a great TV show. There are a lot of great parts in this book, and I think actors enjoy playing complicated, flawed, not very nice people as much as some of us enjoy writing them.
I know. And are you still doing your pop-up book sessions?
I am. And what a timely question, because just today, the fall schedule was posted on the website and on Eventbrite, and we've got Steve Martin, and we've got A.M. Holmes and Edmund White, and there's a real mix of books, Chris Pavone and Taffy Brodesser Ackner, and it's a great list this fall. And we're doing them in person in Manhattan. Everybody has to be vaccinated and masked, but we're also doing them online simultaneously. So if you're not in New York, or the event you're interested in is sold out, you can attend over Zoom, and the Zoom attendees also get to ask the author questions. So it's a lot of work, but I have to say it's a lot of fun too.
I'm sure. And I love your story. You've written books since you came out of school, and yet when you write a book that everyone talks about, it's like a new discovery.
I know. I was an overnight success at 60 years old. Pretty funny. Overnight success with my 7th novel. But, I am a grateful person, and I was always very aware that for a mid-list author like myself to continue to be published and well published was, nothing to sneeze at. It was, a real accomplishment, and it could not have happened without really a devoted agent who never cut me loose because I never made any money, and a great editor who believed in me, and in fact, who believed in me so much that she wouldn't let me publish The Latecomer until it was right, and that meant turning it down several times before it was right. So, I am incredibly supported by these two women, and it's not empty speech to say that I wouldn't be here without them.
Well, it's a very exciting time in your life. Congratulations.
Thank you, Joan.
I love reading it. It's by Jean Hanff Korelitz, and it's Celadon Books. All the best to you and your family. We'll talk again.
Thanks, Joan.
Get into your body's vitals with the Vitals app on Apple Watch.
I wanna get into my body and let my skin do the talking. I wanna feel like I'm myself again.
The Vitals app tracks key overnight metrics so you can spot changes in your health before you feel them. The Vitals app on Apple Watch. iPhone XS or later required. The Vitals app is for wellness purposes only and not for medical use.
I wanna get into my body.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Taking you behind the curtain. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Debra Messing works more than almost any actor I know. In fact, I just saw her on Netflix in a new show, a new film called 13, the musical. And I was really curious. I've watched Debra Messing work in so many things. She just was on Broadway in Birthday Candles. You've seen her in major TV series. And this was a little bit of a departure. She sings, she dances, she knows so much stuff about so many things, and her kid is about to have a bar mitzvah. In this film, it's about a family breakup. They're divorced, and the mom, played by Debra, goes off to her hometown, small town, to move back in with her mother. So what attracted you to this, which was charming, but a little bit different?
Oh, so many things. Well, firstly, I had never seen it, but I knew that the music was from a Tony-nominated writer, and so I knew that it was a special piece. And I also knew that the original Broadway show only had kids. There were no adults at all in that production. And when Neil Marin, who produced it, he also produced the movie Chicago, and he's produced everything basically that has anything to do with singing on TV or film. He was my executive producer for my TV show Smash, which was about the behind the scenes of Broadway. And he reached out and he said, we want you to do this. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. So I was like, no, thank you. And it was up in Toronto when they were completely locked down, more locked down than the United States.
Yeah.
And then they said, we're writing a song for you. And I was like, hold up. And, I grew up listening to all the Broadway musicals. My mother was actually in a teenage quartet when she was in her teen years. So singing was a big part of my family. And the idea of having to sing a song absolutely terrified me. And that's usually a barometer. That's one of the barometers I use to whether or not I should do something. If I'm terrified, that means I have to do it.
And I read that you had COVID then too, which had an impact on your voice.
Yes. There was a lot to contend with. I had a very bad case of COVID, and so I called my singing teacher, and we hadn't been able to work in a year because of my COVID. And I was like, can we do this in time? Can we rebuild my lung capacity? Can we do this? And she's like, yes, we can do this. And so we worked so hard for 1 month straight. And I learned the song. And when I got the offer, my son overheard and said, 13, you have to do it. You have to do it. And I was like, how do you know 13? And he had gone to a performing arts camp called Frenchwood.
I remember that camp.
Yes, and they did it there, and he saw it there, and he said, "You have to do it. The music is fantastic." So that pretty much sealed the deal. And I was off to Canada and sat in a hotel room for 2 full weeks to quarantine, which was very fascinating to be in a room by yourself for 2 weeks and to have government officials knocking on your door every day at different hours of the night to make sure that you're really in there. But then, we began, and I went in and rehearsed the song with Eli, and who plays my son, incredible Eli Golden.
Yeah, he did great too.
Yeah, he's amazing. And so that's how we begun. And my very, very first day of filming was the song. And, which also scared me. I was like, wait a minute, you're making me do that the first day? When nobody knows me, where like, I don't have any sort of like people sort of, pulling for me. And they're like, we want to do it first. So that was it. And then I had the privilege of just watching these 12-year-old kids just blow me away with their incredible talent, their singing and their dancing. The thing that made this, for me, so special was, unlike every other, school musical movie that you've seen, these kids were really 12 and 13 and not 18 and 19 playing 12 and 13. And so, what you really felt that they were 12. And then I got to play with Rhea Perlman, who is, a television comedic legend. And we both worked with Jimmy Burrows, but had never had the chance to work together. So, everything just laid out as like, okay, this is a done deal. And also, I might say, it was very important to them that the cast members be Jewish, which I thought was very interesting.
It is interesting. Did you care about that?
I did. I was grateful when I heard that, because, to be honest, over my career, there have been times when I have not gotten a part and the feedback has been, she's too ethnic looking. And, so to have them want to be completely authentic, really meant a lot to me. And, I was just stunned when I saw that he was actually going to be reading the Haftorah.
Right.
Like, not just one line, like, the last scene in the bar mitzvah, he is singing an Aliyah for a while. And I just started crying. I couldn't stop crying. It was when all those kids stood up and started singing along. I just felt like, this is important, because there are people out there who have no idea what a bar mitzvah is, who have never met anyone who is Jewish. And, this is going to be seen globally. And it's gonna address otherness, coming into a community, being the only Jewish kid, what that's like to be an outsider, and ultimately being completely welcomed and accepted, and realizing that all the kids are exactly the same, that it was no different. Right. And I thought it was a beautiful message.
And beautifully done. And you had actually experienced this when your family moved to Rhode Island, and you were one of 2 or 3 Jewish kids, and you had to fit in and start all over again. So this really had to resonate with you.
Oh, absolutely. I felt like, you know what? I know this. I know what this feels like. Yes, I was one of 3. And, we had the lights at the end of our driveway. I live next to a farm, so our driveway was a quarter of a mile long. And we had these big round balls at the end by the mailbox, and they were hit with bats and destroyed, and the mailbox as well, more times than I can even count. And, it was something that was just a constant reminder that there were people who didn't like us. And I was young, and I was like, I don't understand. I don't understand why they don't like us. And then one Halloween, my grandfather was visiting, and we woke up the next morning, and my grandfather's car had a swastika painted on it.
Oh, no.
And that was the first time I even saw a swastika. And my mother she just was paralyzed by it. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. You know, she made me go back into the house, and I could tell that she was just devastated by it. And I think it took me to grow up and to have a lot of different experiences and different cultures to finally, as an adult, realize the impact that had on me as a child, and how very specific that an experience that was, and to honor it.
That's interesting. And your own child has had a very different kind of childhood, right?
Oh, absolutely. The absolute opposite. He's grown up in the center of New York City and Brooklyn. So from, the time that he could walk, he and I have been walking down the street, seeing every color skin, hearing every language spoken, every socioeconomic level, on the subway. It was the upbringing that I wish that I had, that I was grateful that I was able to give to my son.
Right. But when you were growing up, that town was a small enough town where you still got to do things like theater and things that you loved. That was my oasis. That was where I knew I was 100% welcome. And also I realized that I can be somebody else entirely. So, being able to become someone else with a different name and different needs and different situations, I felt like I was in a way going into like a protective bubble, and it felt really great, and it felt exciting, and ultimately it sparked something creatively in me, which lasted. But you, after you got out of Brandeis, you actually started working very soon and starting to do TV and a lot of stuff that a lot of performers don't do or get a chance to do.
Well, right after I graduated graduate school, right after Brandeis, I went straight to New York and was accepted into the NYU graduate acting program. And so I was one of 15 students to graduate after 3 years of 80 hours a week, every week, studying every aspect of the craft. And when I got out, I was incredibly lucky because I got a theater job in Seattle, The Importance of Being Earnest, right away. And then I came back, and, within that first year, I was doing an off-Broadway play, and then I got my first TV gig, and then I got my first movie.
And they were successful.
They were successful in that yes, they were successful. Yeah. I mean, I just was so grateful that, it was the TV show wasn't canceled after 2 episodes, which was happening a lot back then. And the movie, I had never been on a movie set. So I was just, trying to not fail miserably. The first day when you show up on a movie set, and you start, all the different cameramen, they put colorful tape on the floor where you need to stand as you walk through a scene so that they can have light on you and they can focus on you. I had no idea about that. So we would start, he'd say action, and then I would walk and I would not be on my mark. And they'd be like, cut, Debra, you missed your mark. Okay. And then I go back, cut, Debra, you missed your mark. Okay.
Oh.
Debra, you missed your mark. What's a mark? And then he told me, and, so I was as wet behind the ears as you could possibly be. And I was so proud to be a part of that movie.
Right. And learning on the job. Do you remember what movie that was, your first?
That was A Walk in the Clouds with Keanu Reeves.
Unbelievable. And then at what point did Grace come into your life?
After that film, I went back to New York and did a two-hander play by Donald Margulies called Collected Stories. That at the time had been, one of the most creatively fulfilling and challenging things I'd ever done. I was so happy. And then I got a call that there was this TV show on ABC called Prey, Prey, that had been in pre-production, and they had their lead actress, and now they were 10 days away from the first day, and they were firing her. And they wanted me to step in as the lead in a drama. And so, I took a leap of faith, and we packed up and, we moved back to LA, and we were counter programming for a little comedy called Friends at the time. We were on ABC. And so we shot a half a season, but I was working 18 hours every single day and getting up at 4:30 in the morning. And I couldn't function. And so when the season ended, I called my agents and I said, I'm getting into bed. Don't call me for 3 months. And then, within a couple of days, they called and said, we have a script for you. And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm telling you, I can't. I have no energy. And they're like, we are going to messenger over the script. Stay in bed, but read it because it's a special script. And that was Will and Grace.
And that was another huge beginning.
That was 8 years. Yeah. That changed my life for sure.
And still changes your life. But you were very unusual in that although that idea is so strong, you still went on to do other things, including Broadway.
Yes. Broadway was always, always my dream, always my very first goal, started from the time that I was, 5. And I had been offered opportunities, but they never fit into the schedule with Will and Grace because we had a finite amount of time off in between seasons. And then we finished, and then I did my very first Broadway show, John Patrick Shanley's play. He wrote Doubt, the play, and ultimately the movie Doubt, outside Mullingar. And that was just an incredibly magical, scary, wonderful thing. And then I went on to do Smash, and then the TV show, which I loved. And then Mysteries of Laura. And then I got this Broadway show that I was just dying to do. And the pandemic came, and we were 2 weeks into rehearsal when all of Broadway was shut down.
Yeah.
And we didn't know if we were ever going to come back and be able to do the play, which was devastating. And so we just all sat in our apartment, waiting for the world to heal.
It out.
Yeah. And the sad thing is there were so many extraordinary plays that, previewed for 3 nights, and then the pandemic shut them down, and they never came back.
So hard.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Laurie Metcalf. was starring in that, and they only did 3 previews. And, you know, for that to have happened, I can't even imagine. So when they called and said, we're doing this, I was like, I'm in. I don't care when it is. I don't care where it is. I'm in. And so they were like, okay, just sit back. We're going to figure out, you know, a theater for it, a space for it. And finally, that's what I've been doing over the last year. And we had this beautiful run, and it was glorious. It reminded me of why I wanted to be an actor.
Right.
But it literally, like, it broke my back. Like, I had, you know, 3 discs, you know, bulging discs, and you know, so I'm still doing PD now, recovering from doing 8 shows a week, but I just feel so grateful because it was the role of a lifetime,
and it was fabulous. And now, with everything you're doing, what is on the Debra dream list when you get fully restored?
Well, Bros is a movie that I'm doing. I have a cameo in that's coming out next month. That's a Judd Apatow produced comedy, and I have been wanting for 30 years to be in a big, broad comic film, and
there it is.
This was it. I got a taste of it, and it was so fun. And so now I want more. Now I want to do a film with a bigger part in it, and to really sink my teeth into doing something like that. I will always turn back to theater. There's no question about it. But that schedule, it's inhumane.
Can kill you.
And so, you know, you can't do it every year. You need a few years in between. And it costs you money to do Broadway. You know, they don't pay enough for you to pay your rent and utilities and everything. So then you have to find work that actually pays you so you can sustain your family.
Right. You need a new TV series so that you can do everything else. But it's all possible. And everything looks good. I'm very happy for you. And
thank you so much.
And can't wait to see the next Debra adventure.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
When it happens, we'll talk again.
I look forward to it. All the best to you and your family.
Okay. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Debra. Lovely to talk to you. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Ask Joan.
A lot of you have texted me or emailed or whatever asking, are there any thoughts for getaways for the last weekend of summer? Well, the answer is yes, but at a price. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. Prices are high for accommodations. You know, restaurants have gotten very expensive. But here's what we found. One of my favorites, Mohonk Mountain House in New Paltz, New York, in the Hudson Valley, a historic landmark, farm-to-table food, an award-winning spa. They offer in the price 3 gourmet meals, all kinds of activities, hiking, biking, tennis, swimming, boating, golf, and spa. Rates for the Labor Day weekend start at $9.78 a night plus tax for 2 for a queen room. And then Woodstock Inn and Resort in beautiful Woodstock, Vermont, is absolutely lovely. A few king rooms available starting at $7.33 a night plus tax and fees. And of course, Gurney's Montauk Resort and Seawater Spa right on the beach. Expensive, $1,369 a night, plus tax and gratuities. Places like the Driftwood on the ocean in Montauk also are expensive. And if you want bargains, the Reeds at Shelter Haven in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, near Cape May, has rooms available for under $800 and very nice. And Cape May hotels like the Periwinkle, a 2-star family hotel, actually have rooms for under $500 during Labor Day weekend. So just a look. It takes work and phoning and the computer, but you can get something.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.